Our first reflection this morning is from Kelly Wigmore.
Okay, good. I have been a member of the Citizens Review Board for the past 10 years. The CRB works throughout Oregon as part of the state judicial system. It provides citizens a voice on the safety, stability, and supervision of children in foster care. At monthly meetings, each CRB board, led by a field manager, answers a series of questions for individual cases and then determines if the Department of Human Resources has fulfilled its requirements. I've always been involved in volunteering, especially since my retirement. Most of my experience until CRB has had an element of fun, although can serving on boards really be considered fun? Song leading for brownies at day camp, reading with second graders, working with friends at the food pantry, shelving favorite titles for the library bookstore, and here at church providing music and hosting daytimers. But CRB has been different. I've had to participate in an extensive training over the years and spend a full day each month in a meeting with lawyers, social workers, and DHS workers, CASA representatives, parents, and foster parents. 10 days before a meeting, we are sent background information on about 6 to 12 foster care cases. We read through them, checking to see if what was deemed necessary by the court is being done. This pre-meeting preparation may take up to 16 hours and include medical, school, and law enforcement documents. In addition to this being hard work, it is often emotionally draining. Our board reviews cases for families in fragile and difficult situations. I'm often reading about incredibly grim family dynamics from which children must be removed, or about children with serious medical or mental health conditions which make it very hard to find appropriate placement. This trauma affects me and can be hard to leave behind. Having sworn confidentiality, I can't just call a friend and talk about it. I continue to do this, though, because it feels important and has taught me a lot. One of our stated goals is to treat others with dignity and respect. Sometimes that's a challenge, given what I've read about a case, but I try. I know now that parents are usually not all bad or all good, that we are all imperfect, but may need help with how to be with our children. Also, how crucial childhood events and relationships are to each person's whole life. Sometimes our children must be cared for and protected by the state, and always the state must be monitored and held to task. The Judicial Department often seeks new CRB volunteers. Please talk to me if you are interested. Thank you.
Our next reflections will be from Lisa Westapher, Patty Snow, and Brian Fassett. Patty and Brian, if you'd come on up and get in the queue, that would be awesome. Thank you. Lisa asked me to read her reflection. So, my name is Lisa Westapher, and I've volunteered for over 20 years. It started with a bad breakup in my early 20s and needing something to keep myself busy on weekends. I started at the cat adoption team. I spent several years volunteering almost every weekend, cleaning litter boxes, feeding cats, and playing with kitties in the shelter and the hospital. It brought me so much joy. I mean, who doesn't love kitties? But going so often, I fell in love with so many of those cats waiting for a home. There was one in particular named Molly. She'd been at the shelter for months and was the sweetest, most beautiful calico who was as soft as a bunny. But no one wanted to take her home. She'd been hit by a car and had surgery to fix her injuries, and while she was fine, she had some nerve damage that made it so she couldn't really feel the litter box, so sometimes she missed. Week after week, I played with this kitty and fell in love and finally decided, okay, next week I'm adopting her. I went in for my shift that Saturday morning, ready, and she was gone. That week, a little old lady adopted Molly. I felt so happy and so sad, and 20 years later, I still smile thinking about Molly. I've done other volunteering. I planted trees and cleaned beaches with Solve. I served food boxes and Thanksgiving turkeys for the Sunshine Division. I sorted food donations at the food bank. I've worked at cooling and warming shelters in Portland. I've collected hygiene items and clothes for shelters. I've walked dogs after work for the Pixie Project. That was an awesome job. I took a break from volunteering for a few years while I got busy with life, hobbies, and eventually kids. But when I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder that affected a lot of the physical fitness I loved to do, I realized that I needed a hobby other than running or CrossFit. In my grief at the health issue, I wondered, what is something I could spend my time doing that renewed and invigorated my spirit? What was a hobby that made me feel good and useful? I remembered how much I loved volunteering. I signed up for Adopt One Block and picked up trash in the neighborhood, something I could do on my own schedule. This was also something I could do with my kid, and that was important because I wanted my children to grow up with a desire to give from their heart as well. Then I found UUCWF, a welcoming place with kind people that want to give from their hearts. I found people who love the environment and social justice, like-minded individuals who want to make the world a better place. I connected with new friends to write vote forward letters to encourage voters to turn out for this election. I joined the fundraising committee and had a blast planning the auction. Volunteering doesn't have to be a huge commitment. Everyone is busy. It can be something you do once a month, or volunteering for an event to help out for a few hours. When people come together to do great things, we can do great things. And I promise, once you get the volunteering bug, it's hard to get rid of it. Okay, me again. Thank you, Lisa, for that. Okay, Patty?
Good morning. I'm Patty Snow. I've been a member for about 10 years. I joined when we had the interim minister just before we hired Marcia. So I feel a bit like I'm preaching to the choir, quite literally, talking about volunteers because we have so many wonderful volunteers here, but I wanted to share a little bit about how important volunteering has been throughout my life. The first time I remember volunteering, I was 12, and I was a junior docent at the LA Zoo at Griffith Park, and that really affirmed my love of biology and animals. Fast forward to high school, I was a candy striper, and I volunteered in a hospital, and that affirmed that I did not want to go into the medical industry. As much as I loved and admired them, that was not my calling. Fast forward, I was an undergraduate in biology at the University of California at San Diego and really loved oceanography, marine biology, but at the time UCSD didn't have an undergraduate program in marine biology, but they had a fabulous graduate school just down the street at Scripps Institute of Oceanography. So I volunteered there in a lab and also in the aquarium. And that really affirmed my love of oceanography and also I think helped me get into Oregon State University and their oceanography graduate school. Fast forward to 1990, I was moving to Portland to work for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And as soon as I was able, I started to volunteer for Portland Center Stage, which is the largest theater company in Portland. At the time, it was called the Oregon Shakespeare Festival Portland because it was affiliated with Ashland, but they have such different formats, they split. Very amiable, of course. And so I've been volunteering for them for 34 years now, tenaciously holding on whether I moved, changed jobs, got married, had kids, all those things. It's like I'm still going to volunteer because I love the theater. I love to be theater adjacent, not in it. So that's been important to me. And also one of the reasons that I joined the church 10 years ago is I wanted to volunteer for things like the Oregon Food Bank, HOPE, that Ellen talked about, and also Feed the Hungry. Which has been very rewarding, and I did that as soon as I retired 2 years ago. I said, sign me up. And an unexpected joy of volunteering has been the choir. It's been something I hadn't done in a long time, and it's been really rewarding to be part of that. And all the types of volunteering really, you feel like you're giving back to the community, but they also create community. So that's been really important to me throughout my life, defining who I am, even where I'm going and what I'm doing. So I did want to close with the words of Aaron Burr and Hamilton from the musical Hamilton. It's you got more than you gave, and I wanted what I got. Thank you.
Good morning again. As you know, my name is Brian Fassett. And I'm going to start with a quote from the Peace Corps director, John Dellenbach, from 1975 to 1977. He said, "At the heart of effective service in Peace Corps is a meaningful concern for others. Aimed at the Peace Corps' basic goal of promoting world peace and friendship, it ends in a win-win-win situation. America gains, the country of service and the world gain, and the committed volunteer or staffer come out as a big winner." The toughest job you'll ever love. That was the line that hooked me. It was hanging on a poster in a hallway on campus. I was a freshman in college at Colorado State University, and I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. But that message really resonated with me. I knew how to work hard. I'd been working all my life, and it definitely hadn't been work I loved. So I met with a recruiter, got a book of volunteer stories, and knew that someday I was going to say that I had done the toughest job I ever loved. And for me, that would be saying something because of my early life of work. I grew up on a ranch in a family where all the males enlisted in military service, and I knew I didn't want to follow in those footsteps. I was spurning the War Corps for the Peace Corps. It took 8 years from that first meeting with the recruiter, including a year in the application and medical screening process, before Kate and I were on a plane headed for Bulgaria. I could say yes and no in Bulgarian, and I could find it on the map, but I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. I spent 27 months translating a website, taking pictures of farmers, applying for grants, teaching English, sharing my culture, learning about the rich culture and food and history of Bulgaria, and convincing my colleagues that Americans didn't use the word draggle, and our streets aren't paved with gold. My service in Bulgaria ended by training the next group of volunteers, which set the trajectory for my professional life. And still today, 20 years later, I'm serving the Peace Corps' third goal by telling people about my experience, what I learned about Bulgaria and Bulgarians, and encouraging others to join. Until we became parents, volunteering with the Peace Corps definitely was the toughest job I ever loved. And before the Peace Corps, volunteering wasn't new to me. In fact, I'd spent years learning about the value of volunteering. I knew volunteering makes the world a better place and makes me a better person. Doing something, taking action, had always been a way that I showed care. Starting in 4-H and the Boy Scouts, and then as a high schooler in Key Club and the National Honor Society, I was constantly volunteering. In college and after, I volunteered with Habitat for Humanity. All of those were fulfilling, but nothing compared to donating 2 years of my life in a post-socialist East European country to the 3 goals of the Peace Corps. Fast forward to today, and I'm still volunteering, maybe more than I should be. Sometimes it's just hard for me to say no. But it gives me a sense of purpose and accomplishments. I'm happy to be paying back some of the benefits that I gained from volunteers earlier in my life. Kate and I lead a 4-H club, and I've been an active part of this church on COM and Worship Associates, and now the board. Volunteering is integral to my life.
Our next reflections are from Nicole Allen, Kari Jacobs, and Joan Young. Nicole, come on in.
Good morning. My name's Nicole Allen, and I've been coming with my family to UUC now since January. I'm Reformed Evangelical Christian, so Volunteering has always been pretty important to me. A lot of it stems from past trauma in my past and trying to find community and finding that with other people that want to help out. And for years, I did a lot of volunteering for things that other people really enjoyed doing. And how I kind of fell into my newest really awesome volunteering is my husband likes to paint. So I had a friend who works at the women's shelter up in Portland, and she asked me to come teach a painting class. And I was like, "You're talking to the wrong person." She's like, "No, come anyway." So I did. And I was working with their staff, but I met all these amazing women, and they were going through a lot of the same story I was, even though I wasn't like in recovery. But I had just started therapy, learned I'm ADHD, you know, family trauma, not anxiety. I'm sure a lot of us have that same story. And apparently, crochet really helps with recovery, coping skill, it's healthy, and that was how I got my diagnosis pretty quickly, because I always had a crochet hook in my hand. And I had like this divine inspiration from the Spirit that I needed to come back and start teaching these women how to crochet. And I needed to help them find outlets that were healthy for them to do things as well. Because I constantly get people asking me to make things for them like this, but they could learn how to do it themselves and have a skill. And so I think the biggest idea from my reflection comes from the fact that you can find anything that you love to do and turn it into a volunteer opportunity. It can be something as silly as crocheting, doing chalk art on the sidewalk with kids at the park, and that we don't have to put ourselves in boxes and need to sign up to someone else's program. We can kind of just figure it out. I never taught crochet before, but now I've been doing it for a year, and people are actually making things, so it's pretty cool. And I've been able to get a lot of support from, like, even my employer. I'm a professional land surveyor, so, like, I'm not an artist. I just can do some stitches and counting. I'm really good at that. So it's just brought in this whole new community of people I've gotten to know, and just getting to spread my knowledge and really feel like I am making an impact that's going to last for a long time and isn't hard to get into the door, and really just also kind of heal my own inner child. So that's my reflection.
Good morning. My name is Kari Jacobs. My husband Ray and I moved here 4 months ago, just after I retired from teaching, to be closer to my family. I've been a UU for about 35 years, so when we bought our place in Beaver Creek, we looked for the closest UU church and found this wonderful congregation. We haven't attended much yet, as we've had a massive remodel project underway. However, we should be around more regularly now because we're moving in this afternoon. And we look forward to getting to know more of you. Volunteering has always been a part of my life. My parents instilled in me from a young age that giving back was important. They taught by example, volunteering with the Boy and Girl Scouts, our church, Rotary, the Portland Zoo, and numerous others. During the years I was raising a family and working, I found time for a few different volunteering opportunities, all of which were fairly minor. But once my daughter moved out on her own 3 years ago, I was looking for something to do with my free time. I've always had a soft spot for refugees and donated often to the IRC, though I always wished I could do something more tangible. I found it when we ran into a former coworker of Ray's at our UU church in Sacramento. She told me how she and a couple other ladies had begun helping Afghan refugees who were resettled in the Sacramento area. So I joined the Facebook group that they had set up, joined my local Buy Nothing group, and jumped in. Over the course of the next 2 years, I pretty much took over helping dozens of families at an apartment complex that was much nearer to my home than the ladies who had started there. I drove all over picking things up and delivering them to these families. I learned about the government and NGO services available to the families and tried to help them access what they needed. I helped them look for work, make doctor's appointments, helped with banking issues, and more. I enlisted my husband's help to a huge extent, and also the help of a good friend and neighbor of ours who had a truck. We learned things through that time. We learned about the Afghan culture and the differences in people that are the same everywhere. Most Afghans we met were extremely thoughtful, kind, and very grateful for all that we did for them. Some were not. Some were greedy and unappreciative. Sometimes I felt like the only thing I did besides work was run around picking things up and delivering them to Afghans. Sometimes I felt like I had to stop and take a break, and my husband and I would discuss it and agree that I would do that. And then I would see if somebody would call me or text me with something they needed, or I'd see something on Buy Nothing that I knew somebody would want, and I was back at it again. I couldn't resist the urge to help people who had so little, had lost so much, and had no way to get the things that I could get for them. Like pots and pans, pillows, clothing, backpacks, furniture, and sometimes food. Many of the families had very little education, and their priorities were very different from mine. But one family in particular endeared themselves to us, and I'm especially close to their oldest daughter. She's 21 years old and wants to be a heart surgeon. She's in her second year of community college now, while continuing to hold down a full-time job to help support her family of 10. I'm so amazed by her drive, dedication, and her humility. I've helped her navigate the college system, and I continue to follow her progress and help her from afar now. This work with refugees was by far the most impactful of my volunteering experiences. To me, volunteering is putting love into action. It's putting my faith into action, doing something to make this world a kinder, more inclusive place. And I'm so looking forward to finding the ways that I will do this here in the Oregon City area. As soon as I'm settled, I'll begin looking for ways I can help others here.
Joan Young is traveling today, so she asked me to read her reflection. Why would somebody in their right mind spend hours cleaning sticky finger marks and boogers off books? Or counting out 12 tea bags and putting them in Ziploc bags over and over? Or taking non-English speaking teenagers from another country into your already busy home for several months? Or picking up and organizing produce donations for people who are food insecure? Or digging out weeds, or hauling garbage to the dump, or writing dozens of letters to people you will never know, hoping to entice them to vote. All for absolutely no pay. Well, I am one of those people who is obviously not in my right mind because I actually run to these opportunities. I enjoy doing any of what I mentioned and more, as long as I know I am somehow benefiting a needed cause. Fred Rogers said, that's Mr. Rogers, if you don't know his first name. Fred Rogers said, "Find the helpers in your community." For over 2 decades, in my last job before I retired, every day I witnessed hundreds of helpers gifting their time, energy, and expertise to help our community thrive. When tracking their hours at the agency, volunteers annually gifted the equivalent of 50 full-time employees. I know firsthand the difference volunteers can make. I am at my best being in the trenches with others and helping others. Over my 7+ decades of being around, I have volunteered in so many ways. One-time and ongoing gigs, once a week, or once a month, or 24/7. I've helped with infants, toddlers, school-age kiddos, with adults of all ages, and with animals. Each time I step into a helper role is unique and provides new lessons and experiences. Some pull more at my heartstrings, and some are more enjoyable than others. Some make me lasting friendships, and others are just passing connections. But each time I agree to volunteer, I find myself connected to larger and vital parts of our world. We donate financially to a number of organizations doing good and important work in our community and in the world. Money is necessary, yes. However, just gifting funds does not give me the sense of satisfaction and connection that actual hands-on involvement provides. Many folks volunteer in some ways within our church community. I know and feel quite blessed to have these connections when we volunteer together. If you come to church and perhaps join us at coffee hour, yet feel a bit on the sidelines and are not sure you're getting all you would like from church, I urge you to check out opportunities to be further involved. The church's to-do list is huge and ever-changing, and the need for new blood is there. And I guarantee the fellowship in each and every opportunity is invaluable. Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt wrote, "May we each find ways to give something of ourselves, a small piece of what we know or what we are or what we care about most, and invest it into something else. These gifts are a blessing to be shared." I can honestly share that I've always received more than I give of myself each and every time I volunteer. Thank you. Thank you to Joan. It can take some courage to step up and share yourself with this congregation. So for Kelly and Patty and Brian and Nicole and Kari and Lisa and Joan, thank you all so much for putting yourselves out there this morning. When I conceived of this service, I had faith that if I put out the call, congregants would respond. And you did, and I'm very grateful for that. As you might guess, there is a call to action portion of the service, which is to talk about our need for volunteers here at church. I want to wrap this up with a couple of thoughts. I have volunteered in many roles here. Every time I volunteered for something, I had never done that thing before. Teach Sunday school? No. Co-chair the ministerial search committee that auditioned UU ministers from around the country to find the one that would be right for us? No. Join the board and become moderator before I had ever even attended one board meeting? Be on the stewardship committee when I hate talking about money? Be a worship associate and lead services and write sermons? These are things I had never seen myself doing until I started doing them here. And in every one of these endeavors, I have been successful. Part of that was choosing the right opportunity at the right time, or listening to folks who said I could do this thing when I didn't know that I could. That would be Reverend Marcia. But a big part of that success is that I was serving this congregation, and I was serving with you, with fellow congregants. And I was supported, I was encouraged, and I was empowered to be successful at that. So when I read the list of things that we need helpers with here, if you're in a situation where you're like, well, I don't know how to do that, or I've never done that, I believe that you will be successful because you will be doing it with other people here who are also figuring it out, and you'll have the support and guidance of the church. The last thing I want to say is that we need more volunteers. This is a volunteer organization. Our number of helpers is still lower than it was before the pandemic. but our need for volunteers is just as big, if not greater, than it was then. As a result, roles are unfilled, volunteers are stretched thin, and there are some aspects of our church life that aren't reaching their full potential. Our finance, fundraising, care and concern, welcome and greeter, facilities, and grounds teams could all use some help. And there's ways that you can help in all of these without being a master gardener or a CPA. There's entry-level ways that you can come into this and kind of feel your way in. Being a greeter or an usher is a great way to meet people, feel more connected, and help out in the church. Ellen called out the Hope Food Pantry. Other people referenced feeding the hungry. Those are things that make such a difference in our community that you get to do with the people that you're sitting with here in church and make a real difference. So if you are inspired by any of these lovely stories that you've heard shared this morning, or if you'd like to deepen your relationship with this church or with the folks sitting in the pews with you, or if you'd just like to get that little endorphin kick that comes from helping somebody, please consider being a volunteer. You can send an email to the office, and Vivian will get back to you, or you can come talk to me. I'll be standing in the back of the sanctuary after the service with a clipboard, a pencil. There's lots we can do here to continue to help make this the beloved community that we are experiencing today.